McConaughey with McConnell Real Estate Partners here. Today I have my broker, Joshua McConnell, coming on and talk a little bit about investing, kind of what some investing tips are for new agents, how you can start investing if you're not an agent, just a lot of that good stuff. So to start off, Josh, Jen handles more of the listing side. Josh is more of the buyers and investor side. So he's a perfect person to talk to about investing. He as well is also involved in his own personal investments. In 2021, Josh and Jen started the McConnell Foundation, which Josh, I'll let you go ahead and kind of introduce.
Yeah, so the McConnell Foundation was started. Jen and I had an experience with our son when he was 5 months old, where he was diagnosed with cancer, received treatment, and is all good now. Now he's 5. He was cured, and they actually say cured here at MUSC. And a lot of our clients who knew our story and knew that our brokerage takes a percentage of our revenue and donates it back to the pediatric cancer research at MUSC, our clients would show up and kind of just give us a check and say, give this to the cause. And we can't do that. So we started a foundation really on that, of just clients and those around us, having an avenue for them to direct those funds. And then it got a little bit bigger where now we do an annual gala to raise funds. And yeah, so the first year we raised just under 45,000 at the gala. So it's off to a good start. And that's kind of our primary event. Then will be the annual gala each year. And we also did some meals down to the families this year through the foundation.
Awesome. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I was also there at the gala. They kind of help out with some stuff, and it was an awesome event. It was just cool to see all of your friends and the community that you guys kind of have down here all get together and be willing to help out with that. Yeah, so it's an awesome thing with that. As far as your investing, so how long have you been in real estate? You started off, got his MBA from Clemson in finance. He was a CPA down here in South Carolina for a while in corporate America, doing all that, and then working in international finance. And then one day just kind of decided to make the switch. When did you start? I know Jen started earlier 2000s, late 2000s. When did you decide to make the switch, and what was the reason for that?
Yeah, so I'm fairly new to this. In 2019 is when I jumped, and Jen and I started doing this together. Jen's always done it since college. But I was in corporate America. So like I said, I did a finance undergrad. I worked on the international side on finance for some manufacturing companies. Did my MBA at Clemson, got the CPA, but we always intended at some point to do this together, because I'd always done the investing side, and it was always, kind of when is the right time. I mentioned about the foundation. Actually, when our son got sick, that was kind of the catalyst. When he got better, was what's the best use of our time? How can we have the biggest impact? And it was, in our opinion, was doing this together. And that's when we jumped, almost shortly after, within a year after him being cured, is when we jumped into this together. So again, still, the residential sales side is new for me from this side. But I bought my first rental, the book, like a lot of investors, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, came out in 1999. I read it that year and bought my first rental when I was a freshman in college. So I think it was 20 years ago. And I basically bought one where I could rent out. It was 2 bedrooms and they have basements up in Ohio. So there was a basement that could be a room, and then 2 bedrooms. So I could rent it to 2 friends basically, and I could live for free. So that's kind of how it started, was just me getting my own place to live. And yeah, and then we kind of just, naturally, I can't really beat all the conservatism out of me of being an accountant, and I try not to overdo the numbers. But again, it's been just slow acquiring properties, where it's just over time. Sometimes I think it's a great deal. Sometimes it's just market, and then we're prepared to let time give us the ROI. And we go into it with the conservative model and a conservative understanding, and then just let it build itself. And then when we're ready to buy the next one, we build the next one. There's other strategies and there's faster
Gotcha.
strategies, but that's what we've done.
Yeah, long and slow play. Do you still have that first rental by any chance?
No,
You got
no,
rid Okay.
no, it was in Columbus, but yeah, everything's going great around it, but no, I didn't have it.
I was just
I,
curious if you happen to still hang on to it or not.
yeah, when I made the move south, like that's when, in hindsight, or if I'd done it when I was older, I wouldn't. Like, I have a hard time selling them now,
Mhm.
um, but yeah, no, we don't sell it.
No, that's just good. So you got, and I know this is just for other agents, this is just a good point of it. I remember one time you told me a story about, I don't know if it was your first investment or back in the day when you were first looking for a place, but there was an agent that had sent you a mailer, and they would send it every 6 weeks or so. You'd get a little postcard that would come in the mail. And one time you kept it, and you were just like, I'm going to save this for when I'm ready. Well, then you were ready one day, and you went to look for it, and you couldn't find it, and you were like, oh no, where to go?
Yeah.
Whatever. So within a couple of weeks, she sent you another one, and you were able to, then get a hold of her, and end up purchasing the property. And I think that's just important for agents. Just it's about being consistent. Right when you feel like your efforts are about to, are worthless and they're not doing anything, it could be just right around the corners is when that finally that person's gonna call you back. So um,
He sent me, I mean, she probably sent me 20 mailers. And if she didn't send me the 21st, I never would have found her, and it wasn't as simple as it is today with going online. So it makes it sound old, but yeah, I can still remember like AOL dialing up from that basement, and so it wasn't as easy to go find somebody. So literally, it was mailers, and it was if she didn't send that last one, whoever that next person to send it would have been the person I called. And she was great. She's a great agent, but again, like all the marketing efforts would have been for naught if it stopped right before when I was ready. I was looking for it.
yeah. Okay, so you ended up getting in your first investment just as kind of a place to rent out, and for while you were in college. For other people that are looking to kind of get into a first investment, what would kind of be, say you're a younger kid like yourself, you're looking back. What steps did you take to kind of get into that? Like, what were your first couple steps? And you're like, I need to save up this amount of money for the down payment, whatever that may be. What were your first steps with that? And then what could we suggest today? Have those changed? How have those changed? And do they still apply today, or what would we suggest today for being a couple first steps?
Yeah, I think so. My first one was I saved a small amount, and then essentially the rate that I could get um, on student loans at the time, because I was in college, versus the rate I could get on a mortgage. I could get a better student loan rate. So essentially raised part of it from that, like the money you could get a piece back from tuition or books. And so it was like, that was like 30% of what I raised. And then I saved 70% of what I needed. And then, yeah, I kind of had already lined up roommates as friends and just, made sure I was getting a spot where they wanted to live. It was close to everything for us. So kind of then the math just worked. The math worked. I think my payment was, I don't know why I still remember this, but my payment was like $607 or something. And I rented each room for $300. And then, so essentially I was living for free, and we all paid a third,
Nice.
utility. So essentially I was living for free. So then it was easier to save while I was living there. And then it appreciated what I thought was a lot in just a few years. But I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot now, and after what's happened in the past
Yeah,
few
especially
years. But
being down here in Charleston versus you said this one was up in Columbus, so it's just totally different. Like when you're
yeah,
down here, just everything seems so much bigger.
yeah. But I just lived. I mean, I lived like, I just lived cheap for a while, and then saved. And I saved, and I did a minimal amount down. I mean, I think there was a decent amount of programs then, but there's certainly as many, if not more, options now. And I saved 5% is essentially what I was able to save. And then I think those are the two easiest spots. Are one, if you can house hack, if you can get somebody else to basically help you pay the mortgage. It doesn't necessarily have to be multifamily. Like my case, it was just a townhome. It was a 2-bedroom townhome with a basement. And I was able to rent 2 rooms. Um, the next step is like when you meet your significant other. Like, so when I met Jen had a townhome down here in Mount Pleasant. And again, that's another opportunity to pick up another. That's an easy one, right? Where now you're going to have 2 incomes in one household. Don't go crazy with your standard of living, either save, move so you can keep that and just never. And we've kind of always kept that mentality of, as we move in, we focus on value and whether we can hold it as a rental going forward or flip it without throwing the entire gain. I think a lot of times people will throw the entire gain into their next place, right? I mean, they'll throw into the next place and they'll just move their standard of living based on the good fortune they had, which they could put that to work. They could get a slightly better place and move money into a cash flowing asset. And I think it's hard for some people to have the discipline to do that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I can speak of this because when, Molly and I got married and finally got to, kind of share the income, not share, but you know what I mean? We had double income. It definitely was like, wow, like rent's, half the price now. It's, the grocery bill is half the price, everything's half the price. And it was just like, we have all this extra money. And it was like, pretty much being college kids to go into that, it was, totally different. So we're like, wow, it was hard to not, go out and buy a new car. I'm still driving around my Honda Civic. But once we did that and we made that move, it was like, it was hard not to. So it's definitely, but I would definitely say in the long run, just having extra money to save aside and to, Molly and I are pretty much debt free. So it's nice to be able to get to that point and then to not have to, because there's people still paying on student loans. So it's just important to, especially if you're, long term, that investment's a part of your future and something you want to do. It's definitely important to get that. I don't want to say budget, but just get the spending habits and just keep that apart from the beginning. So it's kind of sticks with you throughout the course of that.
It's harder when you have, and it's harder with like once you have kids and once you start a family. Cause I mean, when it was just me, like I was saving like at a borderline dangerous level. Like my car was not safe. You know what I mean? Like, where I decided to rent because it was cheaper wasn't like fantastic. Like, it's hard to, it's easier, I think, early to make some of those sacrifices or enact that discipline early versus, again, if you already have a family, like there's safety concerns. And I feel like there's a lot more things you can justify moving the standard of living, especially when you have kids. So
Agreed.
I think that's part of how I could say, because I wasn't making anything in college. I think when I was working like 2 part-time jobs when I was in school, but they weren't like, I wasn't making crazy money. It was just steadily saving.
So as you were looking for an investment, and I know you kind of said the first one that you got into was more so just that kind of fit you guys and fit what your needs were then. Would you say that's the same thing for all your investments? Is just kind of making sure something fits your needs, or like what would you determine like when you're looking through investments? What to you determines a good investment or something that makes you want to pull the trigger?
So we do areas we understand or we know. One, if we don't want to manage it, we usually know a property manager in the area, which is a big deal if you don't want to manage it, or you got to find one. For us, we're in locations where we know people. And for us, like we have to understand the areas. Like there's areas that have historically had great ROI, but I don't understand the tenant base. So basically I can put myself in my shoes from 20 years ago when I was in college, and that's the tenant base I understand. I don't really think about it beyond that. I mean, it's really a pretty simple approach of, hey, would I have liked that at this stage of my life? Yeah, I would have. Like, so, okay. And then there's a lot of, and I think like one of the things I fight as a finance person is overanalyzing, because I think, one of the things, and what I tell our investor clients is the market overwhelmingly rewards action. So if you're going to wait, like last year, if you would have waited to try to find in last year's a kind of crazy market to make this analogy in, but just to make the analogy, the market's moving at 20%. What are you looking for? Like you're looking for like what's a deal? 5 or 10%. Well, if it takes you 6 months to find a deal, you should have just paid market because you would have got a 10% discount off of today's value. And so I think I really fight not overthinking these things sometimes. And I think a lot of people, when they're doing their first one, when I was in corporate America, a lot of colleagues, they knew I did this on the side. They knew I did real estate on the side, would always ask me all these questions. And then I would touch base with them a couple of years later and they hadn't done anything, but they'd analyzed 100 of them. And it's like 95 of them would have worked, 99 of them would have worked, and it's just the market to me rewards action. So if you like the market, you look at just the general consensus of how you feel about the area of where you're putting your money and then trust it. And like I said, just buying market, if you decide it will pan out. And that's the thing with property, with real estate is if you have time on your side, if you're trying to move it in 3 months, if you're trying to move it in 90 days, 6 months, or even a year, it's a little bit of a different conversation. But if this is something you want to hold for cash flow for, for your future or your family's future, for your retirement, then time cures a lot of sins. Like even if you're paying a seller's premium of 3%, what does that matter 20 years from now? How does that impact your cash flow 20 years from now? It's minimal. So that's what I would say is I fight that still, just overthinking or overanalyzing some of these deals.
Well, I'm sure it's hard too, because that's kind of your background is just numbers and crunching numbers and doing that kind of thing. So I can totally understand that, especially, and I definitely understand the first part of the first investment too, being super nervous and you don't want to overthink it, or you do want to overthink it, but it's important not to. But it's just hard, when you're young and you don't have a whole lot of money, but you want to get started, and it seems like a lot heavier of a load. So I don't understand why people want to, but it's important just to kind of not overthink that.
And your risk is higher at 1, right? Like there's no question. When your risk is at 1 and you don't have other cash flow offsetting that 1 and it's on you, your risk is higher, right? So if all your money was in Enron, like you had a bad day, right? Like, but if it's spread out, they can absorb each other essentially. So you can deal with vacancies, you can deal with evictions the more you have. So it's very real that the risk is highest on the first one, which is also why like house hacking is a nice option too, because you're there and you control it and you're aware.
Yeah, definitely. That's the risk factor is kind of a good thing. I just saw a video on online about someone was saying that it's risky to do that, of course, but think about the risk of not doing it. If you don't do anything, like you were just saying, for 5 years, you're going to look back and you're still going to be the same person 5 years from now. You're just going to be 5 years older and you're not going to be where you want to be. So it's like, the risk of not doing it is almost higher too than the risk of just doing it itself,
and you'll learn, right? Like, and you'll learn either way, you'll learn.
And okay. So I guess as far as the investment side, to create some baby steps for people to kind of, and I use the term baby steps because of the Dave Ramsey training we did. But it's good to kind of have those baby steps to start with. So if we were going to create baby steps in investment, I'd say the first step would be saving up some money, obviously for the down payment. Maybe step 2 would be researching the area, what works best for you, and finding something that is comfortable with you, something that you can relate with without overthinking. And something that just kind of makes sense for, in your case where you were able to find 2 other guys to live with you, for a house pack. If that's the case, then that works best. Maybe you want your own place, but you can find a duplex, figuring out determining what's best for you. And then I guess the third step is just taking action, not waiting too long to create those steps or to put those steps in action.
And I mean, there is scenarios where, or like colleagues of mine, like I mentioned in corporate America, like there was, a couple guys who would go try to find deals and then bring them, right? And then they would raise money or get an equity stake like that. So there is an option. Like if you're finding the deals, that's not for everybody, right? Because it's a lot more of like dealing with rejection and chasing down cold leads, like finding those kind of wholesale deals isn't necessarily a pleasant experience. So it's not for everybody. So this is kind of the more slower but more straightforward way, is to just it's simple, but it's live below your means to save or go find it.
Mm-hmm.
So there is capital available if you find the deal, but you also have to analyze them too, right? Like, and not just take what's listed in marketing material as fact. So
Yeah.
and again, like the more you do it, the more you'll learn. So, and that's
Sure.
where I think a lot of our value to investor clients comes in, is us just helping them put together the pro forma, helping them understand the nuances of the state or the county of where they're looking to buy an investment house or a vacation house. And there's a lot of information out there, and we get a lot of people from different sites or different groups that don't always have the best information or accurate information for what the market is here.
Okay. So as far as agents are concerned, what is the best way if an agent wants to get involved in investing for them to do that, would you say?
I mean, the same as anybody. I mean, it's the same as anybody, although I think an agent's exposure to value and finding those deals is easier because they're in it every day, and they might be chasing cold leads, just for their sales business, right? And might come across something. So I think it's looking for, I mean, first, like, you just have to look at things as an investment. Like, what does it look like? And I think recognizing your market too, like Charleston is a lower cap rate than Columbia, right? Or than some of these spots in the Midwest. And that's one of the things we frame up to investors early, is like, hey, like year one cash flow isn't going to look great for you, but rents historically go up pretty fast here, and your cash flow will change pretty fast. And that's what I tell people, is like, my cap rate is always the lowest in our Charleston investments, but my ROI always ends up being the highest, because the appreciation here exceeds the other markets we're in. So those will cash flow better, but at the end of it, when we exit, these always end up better. So I think, again, like, an agent's just having an eye for it, having an understanding for it. For me and for a lot of people, like, they learn by doing. So I think there's value to your clients if you do it yourself. And I think there's a real factor of that. Like, when you're walking around with investor clients, I think some of them are timid that you're going to just try to sell them anything to sell them, so being honest when a deal doesn't look good, or a deal's going to be slower, because you could throw a dart around Charleston and be right in terms of hitting an ROI floor, right? Like, you're going to do well almost regardless of where you're at in this market. But it's being honest, especially about the initial year, the initial couple years, and just being aware of the costs. Like, we've bought multiple properties off of early investors who thought they were going to make $100 a month or a couple $100 a month, and they weren't able to feed it $200 to $300 a month, which is what happened when they got their tax bill, and they didn't realize, like, that their taxes were going to be 3 to 4x what they were paying. So just having an agent here that understands all the costs that go into it, it's unique. And like, our environment is harsh on houses, right? So I mean, just understanding the maintenance aspect that we need to apply to things, capital reserves, that's really where you can add value. And again, like, you'll learn it by doing. So I think the best, for me, the best way I mean, I was doing it before jumping into this, but I think when I talk to clients, the value that I have to them is that I do this, that I, like, personally risk capital in what I'm telling them. So, a case in point was, like, one neighborhood that we were in. All of a sudden, when I bought in that same neighborhood, just kind of as I was taking people around, I was like, this is the value of that neighborhood, and this is why I like it. And then I ended up buying a couple units in there. And when I bought the couple units in there, the people that I'd already shown that were timid about going in there, now we're anxious to get in there. And so it's just it's on me, I guess, for not building the trust early enough with them. But I think clients appreciate that you do it yourself and you throw your own capital at risk.
Hmm. I think, yeah, I mean, it definitely speaks a lot on your trust in the investment and just your belief that that's a good investment. Kind of helps people, obviously helps people believe in that. Um, so as far as, I'm not good, I guess more on a more light side question. Being in Charleston, you guys have been here for quite a while. What are some of your guys' favorite? I know you guys have over on IOP. What are some of your favorite things about IOP and also Charleston?
Yeah. I mean, if you don't like Charleston, like, I don't know where you're gonna like. So, I mean, everybody's friendly. Like, you go other places, like, people seem like dicks after you live in Charleston for a while because it's just like everybody's nice here. So, I mean, we love the beach. That's why we're here. We have two young kids, and we thought it would be super cool, for them to grow up at the beach. They think it's cool that we grew up across the street from cows. Like, they don't think the beach is cool, so that's how it goes. Um, but no, I mean, we love the beach. I love that these golf cart communities, Isle of Palms is a golf cart town, where you can pop in and you don't need your car while you're here. We take the golf cart to church, we take the golf cart to the grocery store, we take it to the beach, we take it to the park, we take it to the pool. So, the weather's decent. Like, we don't need our cars out here. So I love that about it. And then there's always something to do in Charleston. Like, there's an oyster roast every day. So, I mean, there's something any time of the year, and those are the cold months, right? Like, so that's the off season, is that there's just so much to do here. So I mean, it's the people, the location, and the things to do is what we love about Isle of Palms and Charleston. So
yeah, same. What's your what if you had to pick? And this is so hard because one, they're always rotating, and two, they're all so good. But if you had to pick one spot to tell people to go to when they visit Charleston for dinner or drinks, what would you tell them to go? Where would you tell them to go?
I mean, there's so many variables to that, right? Like, we go. I mean, we like to tell people out Halls downtown because that's where we go. Because my wife doesn't eat seafood, so Halls is a good option for us. Out on Isle of Palms, Islander 71 is a really cool atmosphere. It's at the marina. It's on the water. My kid likes it because he doesn't have to wear his shirt while he play cornhole and run around with his shirt off out front. But they've got, little stand up there for like the bands to play and everything, and it's just a cool atmosphere. So I think Islander 71 is probably our default here. Lawrence's is nice on Isle Palms. That's right on the beach. All the restaurants on Sullivan's are great. Obstinate Daughter's one that we go to a lot, and then downtown we always end up finding our way to Halls.
Cool. Do you have any, like, as far as this, off the topic of investing, for agents? Obviously, things are crazy right now. You guys have kind of experienced this with me moving to Charleston, and you guys also moved to Charleston. Not really knowing a whole ton of people. What are you saying right now is kind of like a big thing that agents can take advantage of to help them grow their own business in 2023?
I mean, I think the main thing is focus on service, and that's always what we've tried to do. And I think why we've had a good run since jumping in and doing this together is just we've never so much focused on the end result as the service of each transaction, right? And the service level that we provide, and that's our primary focus is the customer experience. So that being number one, I think from the back end, I just think manage it like a business, like understand, like, nobody's withholding money for taxes, like nobody's managing this for you. So make sure you have the discipline to manage revenue as it comes in, and make sure you're investing in the business as well, or you're somewhere that's investing in the business. I mean, those are the primary things. I mean, I think just having the financial discipline to treat it like a business, and then focus on the customer experience. And then I think it's just time at that. I think that's the hardest thing for some, is just people come in really motivated, but but honestly, success is, I think the comment like you and I talked about not long ago is like success is boring. Success is doing just the same shit, doing the right shit, but doing it consistent over and over. And I think that's where people flame out is super motivated early. And if it doesn't start rolling right away, then it's just, you know, then they're kind of in shock and they punt on it. And it's like, I remember one time somebody told me just around making phone calls to leads. And it's like, you know, what is a lead worth? Like when you put this in a revenue stake, and it's like, I mean, you should have to call over 100 people to get a deal, right? Like it wouldn't make sense otherwise competition would just come in until it got to that number. So it's just, I think just being consistent too is the main thing for the long haul, and prepared for the bumps. And it's wavy, you know, it's wavy. You'll think you've got it, and then it'll slow down, and then you'll think you've got it again, and just being disciplined to know it's a long haul.
Yeah, that's definitely good. I think there are a lot of people, and there's obviously nothing wrong with that because that's kind of what I did too. But there are a lot of people that were kind of at a point with COVID, and they were looking for just a switch up after all that, and they were kind of looking for a change. And I think there were a lot of people that started out in real estate, and we saw this. I think we definitely saw this the past year, where back in 2020, a lot of people went through the courses and got licensed, and then started their first year at the end of 2020, and went through last year and didn't really sell anything, and then started off 2022, same thing. And when people had to renew their licenses here, I think we saw a lot of agents drop off compared to what they were last year, and it's tough. And I think that's a great point. It's just kind of find a way to stay in it. Especially once you're a couple years in, you've spent all that time and effort to kind of stay into it. So why, again, like what we were talking about earlier, why with the person sending you postcards, if you don't send that 21st postcard, that could be your deal. So it's important just staying consistent and not giving up on why you started it, and remembering that.
Yeah. I mean, everybody says, I mean, when you listen to these people talk, they all say the same thing. So there's nothing overly creative, or there's a little bit of nuances, but nobody's doing anything drastically different. Like they're all saying this is the same thing, this is what works, and it's just them doing it over and over for an extended period of time. It compounds, right?
Absolutely. Cool. Well, we are just about out of time, but I appreciate you taking some time to come in and talk a little bit this morning. This should be uploaded here in the next day or so. But yeah, I appreciate the advice and everything. And I know the other people that watch this will appreciate it too.
Thanks, man.
Cool. Yeah. Have a good one, Josh.
Bye.